talk a little bit about Mimic before we get a chance to see this version. So I think the first question is, what are we seeing here tonight that's different from the previous version?
Well, but this is, I mean, if we could title it correctly, is the director thought that he could do with the crap that was left, you know? It's not exactly what we would have shot. We wrote a very different screenplay. If you Google it, if you Google Mimic, Del Toro, Greenberg, Sales, you know, John Sales, you'll find a screenplay that is very, very different. And especially the ending, the last 20 minutes of the film, where I think the biggest compromise I had to do to win the war, so to speak, and that was the battle that was lost. When I first came onto Mimic, I said, I don't want any guns and no explosions. And what's the fucking end? Guns and explosions. No, but it really is a great sort of morale tale about what it is to make a movie in Hollywood. It was a big learning experience for me. I learned a very useful word, which is no. And then get the fuck away from me. It was a really wake-up experience after Mimic. About 3.5 years I went without being able to raise a movie. You know, I wrote many of them that are still dear to my heart. I haven't been able to finance them. And then Pedro Almodovar came and saved my life with producing Devil's Backbone, you know, which is still my favorite movie. What you're going to see tonight is the movie almost entirely free of second unit shit. You know, Mimic is the only movie where I've had second unit. Every other movie, Hellboy, Hellboy 2, Blade, Pan's Labyrinth, and so on and so forth, all of them are shot by me. Everything action, a close-up of a cigarette burning, it doesn't matter. I shoot everything, or I splinter a C camera and I do that. But this movie I was essentially gang raped by John Holmes in my first movie. It was really left me traumatized about second unit. I hated it. Jim Cameron has a great saying about second unit. It's bad news if it's bad, and it's worse news if it's good. You know, so it really is about owning the movie, knowing the movie you're making, and the movie you're going to see is almost entirely free of second unit. We restored about 10 minutes of a story for the characters and the plot. It's a subtle change, but I think if you like the movie, if you like the other version, I hope you will like this one better. It's tonally more uniform. It doesn't have fake scares. You know, it is more atmospheric. I think it's texturally much richer, and you're going to see that variation, and then explosions and but also because thematically the movie had some stuff that had been taken out, is being restored. So that's what you're seeing. You're seeing a transfer. I do the transfers personally. All the color timing in my movies, all the transfer of my movies I do myself. I love myself. I spend weeks and weeks doing it, so if it's Pan's Labyrinth, and hours correcting each color, windowing the fuck out of the image. Same with this. We spend hours and hours restoring it, restoring the sound. We went through the Citizen Kane type of warehouse that Miramax had, finding every piece of footage we could. And we found almost everything I needed to restore the image. There's a couple of scenes that we couldn't find amongst alternate cuts of Sling Blade, Pulp Fiction discards. We found almost everything. So that's what you're seeing today. Big restoration too.
So I guess the question at the heart of it all is, why a cockroach monster movie? Where does your interest lie in that?
Well, originally when I wrote the first screenplay, I wrote it for a beetle, an insect. I remember that day, it was the beginning of the horror. We were sitting around a table with the studio and one of the producers, and this particular producer had removed his shoes and was picking his feet. And we were talking, and it was really classy. Show business is super classy, as evidenced by yours truly. Now, this guy was there, and we were talking, and the guy says, what about cockroaches? And I really felt the floor was sinking. And I said, if we do that, because it's not roaches, it's a new breed called the Judas breed, which is a cross between a mantis and a roach. I said, if we do that, all we're gonna be known as is the giant cockroach. I was like, you know, I was like Cassandra. I knew it, it came, it destroyed me, it still I was right, you know, no satisfaction. So, but in insects, I adore insects and I fear them at the same time. I think they're the most perfect and most scary creatures. I'm very scared of perfection. I think perfection is completely fascistic and horrifying, and insects are perfect. You know, they fuck when they need to fuck, they sleep when they need to sleep, they die when they need to die. I was shocked. I'm an amateur entomologist since I was a tiny kid, and one of the facts that I was shocked by was reading in a book that some insects are born without a mouth or reproductive organs. They're born with a little bit of food to last as workers and then die and be consumed by the nest. And I thought, oh my God, that's the Republican Party. I mean, I'm fascinated by how they illuminate aspects of humanity or what it is not to be human.
And did shooting in Toronto specifically bring anything to the film that may not have otherwise been there?
The first thing was Carol Spear. You know, I think she's one of the great designers in the world, and she was, you know, she had been designing David Cronenberg's films, who is my hero. You know, and she was a big deal with that. And you know, I think that the crews in Toronto are amongst the best in the world. I mean, it's really fantastic. And I think Toronto is just such a great city. It's an amazing city. I could easily live here. I would probably be deported very quickly.
What did you do? Let's take some questions from you guys. Right there, please.
So talking about insects, was it just like a childhood love of them? Because I've noticed every movie that you made is totally like an adaptation of insects. What's the story behind it?
Well, I love insects, and even in Kronos I say that you know, they are God's favorite creatures. He gave them extra arms, extra eyes. You know, there were many dialogue lines in Mimic that were lost, where she says they have 6 legs, they have no heart, their blood is white. You know, they might as well be creatures from another planet. And we share the planet with these creatures, and they are remote, perfect, efficient. So I'm fascinated by them. I mean, and roaches are particular. I mean, I love them. And I was the roach wrangler in this movie. I'm not credited, but in Kronos I was the roach wrangler also. Because when I was a kid, I learned a thing: if you grab an air can for cleaning cameras, and you grab a cockroach and freeze it for a second. You can freeze a roach for a month. By the way, I don't suggest it. You can freeze a roach and it will resurrect a month later. Oh yeah, and we used to take the roach with a CO2 can, and you could do whatever you wanted, do little figures, and they would slowly go, fuck am I? So on Kronos, I was loading the roaches on a little machine to come through the eye of the archangel, and I was doing the same thing here. I love insects. I know more about insects than I should, you know, and I think they are absolutely fascinating architecturally, the engineering. This movie, 2 scientific facts that are really little known. There is a hormone named after this movie. There's a water beetle that secretes a hormone called mirasorbona, and is named after Mimic. And Stephen Jay Gould was one of my heroes. Stephen Jay Gould had an extra credit question in his final exam about Mimic, saying we got it right. So, you know, I went into this movie, ultimately, you know, I always say the science in movies is like when you say the bullshitanium is about to explode. You're looking for an alibi for things to be believable. So this movie is full of really pure degree bullshitanium. I went in and I said, well, why are insects not bigger? Because they have no lungs, because they cannot generate oxygen, they cannot grow. So we gave them lungs, we changed the color of the blood a little bit. We re-engineered the insects architecturally so they could sustain the weight. You know, we spent many horrible nights at Rick Lazarini's shop mechanizing we knew every name of every piece of the mouth of the insects. We mechanically recreated the palpate, you know, every detail. You know, the insects don't have hands, so the mouth is a very complex apparatus. They slice, they push, they tuck in, everything is done with the mouth. So we recreated everything, packed all those cells. It's really a careful bullshitanium recreation of what you would need for a giant rodent. But I adore insects. I'm a fetish. I have a fetish on them.
We challenge all of you to use the word bullshitanium tomorrow at work. Another question, please. Right there in the middle.
So you're talking about perfection in creatures and how that scares you. Going to the Mountains of Madness with Shoggoths. Imagine that film never gets made, which would be like the most disappointing thing ever. Is there any way you can reveal some of what you have done until this point? Like, will we ever get to see that? There we go.
What we did on Mountains, yeah, I mean, I can tell you some stuff, not a lot, but what we did is, well, the Shoggoths, we were developing a system that allowed the Shoggoths in camera to truly transform in a way that no other creature had. Because normally what you do when a creature transforms is you do essentially an approach that you can call the Swiss Army knife. You fold shapes into shapes. And it's almost like having, like in a Swiss Army knife, you have the pincers, the scissors, everything is folded and you unfold it digital, you know? But essentially what we wanted is to see them become, understand, be incredibly efficient and eternally transformative, so that you never were saying, I saw the monster, I know what it looks like. So if they needed to become X, they became X. It was really, you know, one of the best days of my life is when we showed the creatures to Dennis Muren from ILM, and he essentially got a chubby. I was super happy. Like, I love this creature. This has never been done. You know, and we were very close to heaven. And you know, when you get very close to heaven, you get burned. So we didn't do it. But I hope to do it one day.
Well, I can speak for probably a few people in here that we share your pain. So if there's a communal energy to get that made, I hope it comes out.
I hope so. I mean, I've learned, I sincerely believe that the crap that happens in your life happens for a reason. I'm not just I don't resign myself, but every piece of bad news is a piece of good news.
Right.
I really, you know, I say that to myself every time I weigh myself in the morning. like you have to believe that, like learn from that. And it didn't happen because it was not time for it to happen. If it happens, it was meant to be.
I agree.
You know?
Thank you.
Who else? Middle.
I just want to stick with the insect theme. I just recently saw Phase 4 and it blew me away. I'm just wondering what your favorite 10 insect movies are, and also is there any chance you might program some of them next month for TIFF?
He wants to know what some of your favorite insect movies are, and then if he's going to program any of them for TIFF next month.
We're going to program some really good stuff for TIFF next month, and I invite you to be very, very attentive. We're going to have, I think, the world premiere in Canada of a movie that is one of my favorites in the horror genre that most people have not seen, called Il Arcano Incantatore, the Ancient Sorcerer, an Italian movie that is a masterpiece.
Is that Poppy Avante? The Poppy Avante movie?
Poppy Avante movie.
That is one of the most
wonderful, and it's a really great print. Poppy Avante lent us a print. He's going to do
I
a
worship
video.
you, sir. I can tell you right now, I worship you.
Oh, thank you, man. Well, that movie, I'm going to do a big introduction to it, like on how to savor it the best. We're going to have a long Q&A at the end where we are going to riff and shoot the shit for a while, and that's the main course. We have other stuff that is more common, you know, we're going to have a really great print, I think, of The Innocents. We're going to have a great print of The Haunting. We're going to, stuff like that. What we can get. My condition to TIFF was, let's just get the best prints we can, rather than bring a chewed up fucking print of a 1963 Malaysian zombie movie. You know? We're going to get really classic prints. And I'll be there trying to introduce as many as I can, certainly the Pupi Avati, and do the Q&A with you guys. And my favorite insect movie of all times has to be Them.
Yes.
Them is still a masterpiece, and it's solid. The creatures are good. They're good. They don't look like silly monsters to me. I love them, and they're creepy as fuck still, and great plotting, believable. All the Lusitanium is solid. And so I adore that movie, and I really recommend it if you haven't seen it.
Have you seen Phase 4? It just came out on DVD. Phase 4? Phase 4?
Oh, Phase 4 is fantastic. Phase 4 is fantastic, but I'm still much of a more of a popcorn guy. I love Them with a pack, because I saw it as a kid. And I think it damaged my brain. When I was a kid, I lived in Mexico, and insects are everywhere.
Do you hear that noise at night?
Huh?
Do you hear that noise at night?
You know, I tell you, when we were kids, my grandmother paid us to clean the water reservoir. And it's on Hellboy, if you watch Hellboy. We lifted the lid, and it was entirely covered solid with roaches, and then proceeded to get into her pants, her shirt, fly to her faces. So, you know, I don't know, but them, I remember seeing it and literally dreaming of the sound. Another movie that is not an insect, but the monster that challenged the world. Also, when I was a kid, when they gouged that eye, I was like, yeah. I think, but the best is them.
Right over there.
A friend of mine who works in film said the longest day he ever spent on set was on Mimic. He said it was 32 hours. But the cool thing about that day was that it was a day that Robert Rodriguez was by.
Yeah.
And he said it was really cool watching you guys kind of riff and talk and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
So the question is, what was it like shooting the film with Robert Rodriguez on a 32-hour day?
Well, we did. I tried to do most of the second unit. I was doing 40-hour days, 48-hour days. I was shooting first unit. I'm going to second unit. I fired 2 second unit directors. Robert came in. There's a little bit of Robert's footage left in the death of Josh Brolin. You know, that's all that survives from that unit of Robert. The rest I reshot. Sadly or not, I just didn't like the stuff, and I reshot it. But Robert, I knew Robert when he had done Just El Mariachi. I recommended my DP, Guillermo Navarro, that did 2 or 3 movies with him, and you know, he was nice enough to come in and do it. You know, but I think that that movie was truly such an endurance test. I think it's still the worst experience of my life. This, including the kidnapping of my dad. You know, that made more sense than working with Miramax.
And I'm going to guess there's some aspiring filmmakers in the crowd, so maybe you can give them a little lesson that they can take forward if they find themselves in a similar situation looking for a studio.
Well, it really is very simple. Remember why you're doing this. I mean, I said it many, many times, and it's true. Making movies forever never changes. It's like eating a sandwich of shit. You get bread, but you get shit. Always. Always. You may get more bread as you get more this or more that, but shit will always be there. Like, the aftertaste is not mustard. It is always difficult. We are making a gigantic movie. Some of my crew is here tonight. And we're going through huge turmoil, cutting budgets, cutting this, cutting that. It never goes away. And then you concentrate on the images. You concentrate on what you're doing. You go, it's not about the politics. It's not about the crap we're going through. It's about creating images. So what I do every morning before I shoot is I watch, unrelated to the scene we're doing that day. I carry my favorite movies with me. Right now, I have 1,300 movies with me here. that I carry on 6 hard drives, you know, and I watch 5-10 minutes of my favorite movie. I don't care if it's relevant or not in the morning, and I go, this is what I'm doing. It's not the budget, it's not the actor that is vomiting in a corner, it's not the studio that is torturing me, it's not all that, it's not my parents that don't believe in me. Whatever you're going through is not that, it's making images. And if you can sublimate yourself to that realm, you're a filmmaker. Because filmmakers, the myth is that a filmmaker is a genius that dominates everything and has everything pre-planned, and it's really, we're crisis managers. Every day, in every instance, you're managing a crisis. Filmmakers are guys that makes things go right that shouldn't fucking work. You know, that's really what it is. And when you think of the pinnacle of control filmmakers, you think of one guy, Kubrick, right? Kubrick, and you can say Kubrick knew everything he was doing. He planned everything. And then I can tell you an anecdote that I found really illuminating. When Kubrick was shooting one of his movies with Kirk Douglas, I don't remember if it was Spartacus or I think it was Spartacus. But the fact is, Kirk Douglas had an accident on the set, damaged his leg, was out for a week, and Kubrick wrote him a letter saying, could you please tell the insurance to be down a week because I'm just figuring out what the fuck we're doing. And that illuminates. You can be a great planner. You have to storyboard. You have, and 50% of your makeup as filmmaker is to know what you're doing and plan it perfectly. But you plan it for anything to go wrong. You know, you have to be prepared for everything to go wrong. The actress dyed her hair and it caught fire. The sunshine that you wanted for the scene is gone. It's raining. It's raining mud. A dog was run over that was in the scene. You don't know. You have to deal with that every day. So if you can be an image maker in the middle of a rain of crap, then you're a filmmaker.
Any other questions from the audience? Let's go right on the edge. Yep, you got it.
I'm really digging the Strain trilogy, and is there anything that you can sort of let us know what happens in number 3, or give us some hints?
We're looking for a little taste of part 3 of the Strain.
Well, we delivered the manuscript about a month and a half ago. Before that, we had already written the 3rd book, and we were very, very anxious about it, and I wrote to Chuck. We're in the middle of huge production in LA and all that, and I said to him, you know what, we're going to change the last third of the book. And we went back and we burned the midnight oil for hours, each of us rewriting huge chunks, and all I can tell you is the one I like the most. And we got a fantastic response to the book from Stephen King, the 3rd book. And it's really awesome. And we fulfill a promise we made in the 1st book that guys that you like, we're going to do things that you don't like. And guys that you don't like, we're going to do things that you were going to like. And that not everybody was going to make it out alive. We're cruel motherfuckers to our character. The 3rd book is brutal, is relentless, is epic in scope, and I think that is the one I'm the proudest of, and I hope people like it. It's coming out in about a month. It's coming out October 25th. Our publishers went insane because I was like a helicopter parent, sending new revisions every day and promising, look, I promise you this if you do this revision. I ran out of promises, and the last revision he said, no, we're not doing that. I'm not doing that, because we're being translated to I don't know how many languages and stuff like that, but we poured our heart into the Strain, and I hope you like it. And there's a lot of surprises coming your way, like Jack Nicholson said to Wendy.
This is Stephen King that you were talking about? Okay, Fred. Let's take one more, and I'd like it to be about mimics, so we can bring this thing back around, please. Right here.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the actual special effects on the movie and how long did it take to actually get all the special effects and stuff like that?
We have a special effects question. I think we're trying to get at how long did it take to make up one of the mimic creatures?
Well, I'll tell you, we did it with a great guy that I chose because he was specialized in creating real animals. He did the Budweiser frogs, he did the dogs for commercials, he did lizards. And I didn't want to go with a makeup effects guy that did monsters. I wanted to go with a guy that did realistic creatures. So we went, his name was Rick Lazzarini, he is Rick Lazzarini. And there is a huge credit to Rob Bottin in the movie. And, but the real work was done, the design was done by Ty Ruben Ellingson, who's a good friend and a great designer. And the creatures were built by Rick Lazzarini and his crew, some of which are here. And the thing with Rick is he was really quite a genius mechanically. He had mechanized most famously the face hogger in Aliens, in Jim Cameron's Aliens, the one that runs, that gives you the super creeps. You cannot ever be fucking matched by a CG face hogger in our life, you know. And we developed the mimics over the course of about 8 months, 9 months, or even more. We built all the puppets very, very carefully. We built all the little pieces that made them up. And, you know, the paint job was particularly difficult. You know, doing the translucency and the many, many layers that you get. Roaches look brown, but if you look close enough, they are almost like made of amber. They have layer after layer, and the chitinous layers of the wings, they are like a beautifully polished wooden table. You know, they have many, many iridescent and striations, and we did all of that. We did all of that, and then the visual effects were done by 2 companies. One that was a great company here in Toronto that is no longer there, Core Digital Effects, and the other one was Hybrid. You know, Hybrid, which was starting. Core, we were their first animated job, really, ever. They had done 3D stuff, but never an animation movie, and we were like the fire test. And for Hybrid, we were the same thing. We were like a big test, and I think that there's about 30% of the shots you're going to see today that now may look creaky and this and that. The integration of the blacks is not completely great, but there's a great number of them that still hold, that still look great to my eye. You know, and we have almost no budget. The median Hollywood movie right now has over 1,000 VFX shots. We were one of the early movies in digital. We have 75 shots. You know, all the rest was done physically. So, you know, and I still think that whenever you can, mixing puppets and digital is the best way to go. You know, so it took a long, long time. It was the last shots that you see of the mimics hanging in the ceiling were composited by me on a period of about 36 hours without sleep. There was a guy with an inferno, and I was asleep on the couch. I would go up. The Core sent us 1 mimic hanging, 1 mimic dropping, you will see it, 1 single model dropping, 1 mimic hanging, and 1 mimic moving. That's it. And we had to put hundreds of them. So we spent 36 hours hanging this mimic over here, rendering it at the speed of 1997. Hanging another mimic, rendering, and like that, frame by frame. We have no money to pay a compositor, so and a supervisor, so I was the supervisor on that shot. So it's a movie made with a lot of sweat, tears and blood. Now I can say I love it. So if you don't like it, you can hit me with a fucking tomato next time. That's what you're going to see tonight. Thank you very much for coming.